Tam still in mute, tem to šta? Я сьогодні 2, 1, 4 со школи.
Can the assembly members that are on the phone let me know who's there so I know which one isn't?
This is Dmitry Ivanov.
Thank you. Thank you for being able to call in.
This is Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Hello. I'm here.
Good
Is
deal.
that Ron?
Yay.
Okay, good.
So I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:01 PM. This is a joint meeting. 401. Huh? 401.
401?
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Either I want the meeting to be over or whatever. Thank you. So I'll call this meeting to order at 4:01. This is a joint meeting with the school board for Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. Madam Clerk.
I'm going to start out with the roll call for the assembly. Tim Hale, are you on the phone yet? He may be calling in. Madam Mayor, Stephanie Nowers.
Here.
Dee McKee will not be present. Bill Gamble.
Here.
Dimitri Fonoff.
I'm on the phone.
Ron Bernier.
Here.
You do have a quorum of the assembly, Madam Mayor. Thomas Berge.
Present.
Kendall Cruz.
Present.
Catherine McCollum.
Present.
Jubilee Underwood.
Present.
Brooks Pitcher.
Here.
Ole Larson will not be present. Ted Swanson.
Here.
You do have a quorum of the school board also, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. If you'll all rise, please, and President Underwood, would you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is audience participation. Do we have we do have a sign-up sheet. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So Jackie, you're the first one to sign up. Will you come up, please, and address the joint meeting?
Good afternoon, Mayor and President and school board and assembly members. It is a pleasure to speak with you today. My name is Jackie Goforth. I just got back from a trip from Talkeetna from the library board meeting, and I have to tell you it's a most fabulous drive. This time of year, with all the fall out and moose horns coming out of vehicles as you're driving back, it's great. I also want you to know that they spoke with very derogatory terms about the Library Citizens Advisory Committee down there. I have never seen such an attack of vitriol in my life. They were called yahoos, who sit up on the dais and lord it over people. If you could hear what the comments that are made about the Library Citizens Advisory Committee, you would not believe it. But they seem to think, the academics seem to think that if you have a good education underneath you and if you have a peer-reviewed study, that puts you somehow in an elite category above everyone else. But I lived through COVID. And I also know that everybody who had a peer-reviewed study and was pushing science and saying that they had the clue were pushing 6-foot distancing and masking and all those other things that failed to be true. So I don't do peer-reviewed studies anymore. I have lost all respect for that. You have to prove it to me. So I want you to know that the Library Citizens Advisory Committees are extremely important. They're so important. I'm going to tell you how important they are. This is Judge Gleason's words from her injunction. Verbatim. Judge Gleason's ruling. Of the books reviewed by the Library Committee, the committee voted to remove 7 of them from circulation at all district libraries. We all heard that, right? The committee voted to remove 7. Now the conclusion. The titles that have been removed from circulation do not need to be put back. The titles that were removed for circulation do not need to be put back. The judge ruled in the injunction that those 7 titles do not need to be put back. And the only common link with those 7 titles is the fact they were found to be unanimously obscene by the Library Citizens Advisory Committee. Nothing else links them. So I have asked attorneys to prove this to me. I have two requests out, and I've already run it by 2 attorneys. Doesn't that mean that obscenity does have a legal standing, just like Miller versus California in 1973 says? And doesn't that mean that obscenity can be upheld? Doesn't it? And doesn't it mean that Library Citizens Advisory Committees made up of citizens from the community show what community standards are and that has a legal standing? It does. So for them to be called yahoos, it's beyond my comprehension, it really is. Thank you so much for allowing me the time to speak with you.
Let the record show that Assemblyperson Hale has joined us on the phone at 4:03 p.m. Now, the next person that signed up is Mary Robinson. Mary?
Good afternoon, everyone. Mary Robinson, Matsu Borough resident, and I represent myself. I'm going to read a few sentences from something that was circulated approximately 7-8 months ago. And it is from several of the library directors across Alaska. In light of the fact that we serve all ages and demographics, most public libraries require parental permission in order for a child to get a library card. Parents have a sacred job in raising their children with the values that matter to their own families. We encourage parents to actively participate in their children's visits to the library and to pay close attention to what they are reading and accessing online. We will not, however, limit access to a book because one group within the community finds it offensive. Remember, we serve everyone. So to clear up, there's misinformation, there's disinformation. There are no obscene books in any of the libraries, not in the school libraries, not in the public libraries, not in the university libraries, not in the borough libraries. The actionable defamatory statements that people continue to make about librarians and librarian staff, that they're groomers and pedophiles, well, lawsuits. As the school board knows, not to rub salt into the wound, you're up to what, 4 lawsuits now? And I've attended all 3 of the borough library citizen advisory committee meetings. And as I fill my notebook with the horrendous remarks, transphobic, homophobic, racist, sexist, misogynistic remarks that the LCAC makes while they're reviewing a book, lawsuit, lawsuit, lawsuit. I've said from the very beginning, ill-advised, misguided, and I wish you all the best. And people talk about how they don't want taxpayer money going towards certain books in the library. I'm not thrilled with my taxpayer money going towards all these lawsuits. There's so many things that if you had just taken a moment and said, you know, let's stop and think about this. And unfortunately, with the litigious society that we live in, no matter whichever side prevails in all of these lawsuits, they will be appealed and they will go on for years. I'm still waiting on a request that I put in for public records about the 2 law firms representing the school board for their lawsuits, Jermaine Dunnigan Owens law firm and Cedar, Wenlet, Evans, and Philippi. I'm going to guess by now it's easily up to about $500,000 of taxpayer money going towards these lawsuits. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and have a good afternoon.
That's all the people we had signed up, but we will open it now to anyone else that would like to address the joint meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and everybody. My name is Karen Lewis. And first of all, the parents don't know what's in those books. I didn't know what was in those books till about 1.5 years ago. So when they say, oh, the parents, the librarians that place those books at the fingertips of the children, I say are liable. I guess we'll find out, won't we? And yeah, there probably will be a court case. And the LCAC behaves perfectly well. I've been at both their meetings. They behave fine. What a crock that last person just said. It was just a crock. And the people who want to keep these horrible books available for the children are the ones that have questionable motives or personalities or problems with the way they think, morality problems. I don't know. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. We just need to get these books out of the hands of children. And we will. Thank you all for helping to get this done, too. So I'm very grateful for the enactment of the Library Citizens Advisory Committees for both the school board and for the Matsu Borough. However, being an advisory board leaves a lot to be desired towards why these committees were created. to remove indecent and obscene materials in our school and public libraries. When the final decision is left up to one person, the process can be made null and void. And it kind of was in the school board, and it didn't go as far as we had wanted it to here in this LCAC. Jillian just put it in the adult, and everybody on that committee said it's obscene, it's indecent, and following the law, the state law, indecent material and the points that have to be fulfilled, I see that they are. It's illegal. It's a Class C felony to have these materials in front of the children. Anybody under 16? So I want to refer to the two of the books that the LCAC read, analyzed, and the vast majority of the committee deemed the books indecent, which means the books fit the criteria pertaining to Alaska state law that makes them illegal and should not be shelved in the libraries. In fact, it's a Class C felony, yes. The book Identical was reviewed by the school board, LCAC. There were 8 people from that committee advising. 6 people deemed Identical violates state law and advised to remove the book from the libraries. 2 people advised to shelve it in high schools only. The book Red Hood was also deemed indecent and violates state law by 8 out of 9 people on the committee. 6 people advised it to be removed from the libraries, and 3 advised it to be moved to just high schools. You may be surprised to learn that Superintendent Trainee decided to return Identical to high school, middle school, and there's even a K through 9 school. He also returned Red Hood to library shelves and a whole lot of other books too. These committees are members of our community, okay? Community standards, that's important. It's important. You guys should be the determining factors, not one other person. You guys, the committees, well, you know what I mean, the LCACs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the joint meeting? I'll just remind everybody, for this meeting, this is the only time for audience participation. In our regular assembly meetings, we now have 2 times, but for this special meeting, this is the only audience participation available. So is there anyone else here that would like to? Do we have anybody online, Caleb? We do not. Okay. So we'll go ahead and close audience participation. And the first item is the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
And I think everybody has a written copy,
All right.
as well as it will be on the screen for everyone in the audience. Go ahead,
All right.
sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a very brief report, and traditionally I don't try to surprise the board, so this is the exact same report I gave to the board last Wednesday, so they've all seen these. So here we go. The board approved my goals again for this year. I always include them in my superintendent's reports, and today's slides primarily address the first 3, that we're trying to give all students multiple options when they graduate on time, and that all students are reading by grade level at grade 3, and that that staff have high expectations for all kids. Those are really the first 3. Although this next slide, the next 2 slides are not about those, I thought it's important for you to see where our enrollment is. This has been updated since last Wednesday. You can look at our current enrollment. The count period starts the first full week in October. We are not quite there yet, but we're awfully close. In fact, like over the weekend and between today, we gained something like 39 more students across the district. So this changes daily. And then they're tired of hearing the same exact joke. If we're 99% accurate, we're off by $2 million. So we try to be as close as possible to what we think we're going to end up at. And I'm always amazed at how close we actually come. One change over previous years, we have a higher percentage of students in correspondence schools this year, 17% at this point. Not counting the COVID year, it's usually closer to 14 or 15. Last year, I believe we're at 16. I think this is a trend that we're seeing across the state, more students involved in correspondence schools. The next 2 slides I put in just for the day when I don't have good news to share. We think success looks like the picture on the left. It's just a straight path up, but the reality is it's far more complicated. Life is crazy. And so sometimes you end up going backwards even when you're trying to move forwards. I do have good news to share on all the remaining slides, but I'm putting this one in for that day that I have some bad news to share. And then when we talk about how we're doing as a district, we try not to look at one measure alone. We try to look at several different ones. And so really I'm going to talk about the cost to produce graduates today, as well as how we're doing on the state assessments. I shared these graphs last year with the Assembly, so this has been updated. So these are all of the districts in the state that had graduates and gave their financial data to the state. There's some that are missing, and I'm not sure why they didn't get their financial data in. I don't know. It's too small to put everybody's name, so you can see that we're the red one, Matanuska. The yellow districts are districts where more than half, in fact, for all of them, it's more than 80% of their students are in correspondence schools, and they're funded differently than everybody else. So it's kind of an unfair comparison to compare their cost per graduate to the other districts. So on the next slide, I remove them. And you can see that of the districts that are primarily brick and mortar, we were the second most efficient at producing graduates. And because it's small, we'll zoom in and you can see the top 10. So Delta Greeley, I told the board, I'm a little suspect of something going on with Delta Greeley because the year before they didn't have any data. This year, their funding number looked entirely too low to me because I compared them to Cordova, which has about the same factor for how they're funded. I believe it's about 1.23, 23% more than Anchorage. But yet they were funded way low from the beginning. At any rate, they had a great graduation rate, and I don't want to take anything away from Delta Greeley. At least according to the data that the state is supplying everybody, they were really good at producing graduates, and we were second. Last year, you may recall, we were first. And then I remember last year, Miss Nowers, Assemblymember Nowers, made this comment. She was the only one in all the times that I'd showed this data, she's the only person who brought it up this way. Well, of course, some of them are going to cost more. They get funded more. So let's look at Nome on this page. You can see Nome is at $26,201 per graduate. And if I were the Nome superintendent, I would argue, well, of course it costs more to educate a kid in Nome. We get paid more than Anchorage. So that's a fair argument. So the remaining slides on this particular topic, I have cost adjusted for Anchorage. So there they all are again. And basically Anchorage has a factor of 1, and then the Mat-Su is 1.07, and so is Fairbanks, just coincidentally. And then it goes up from there. So when you take into account that we get 7% more than Anchorage, and you do that for all the other districts, it shuffles the districts around. But even with all of that shuffling, we're still the second one. And we could zoom in on the top 10, and I brought Nome to your attention on the previous one. So that would have been a very good argument for the Nome superintendent to make, because look, they've moved from 10th most efficient to 3rd most efficient when you understand that, of course, it costs more to live in Nome than it does in Anchorage. And so Nome was very good. They were very efficient this year. The point is that we're doing a good job at A, getting graduates across the stage on time, and B, using our money wisely to produce them as efficiently as possible. From there, I want to talk about the other big topic, which is the AK STAR results. Those are the state tests. The state did a much better job at getting us our results in a more timely fashion. Students took these tests late in the spring last year, so April and May. The previous round of tests, it took the state almost an entire year to get us the results. So when we got these in August, that was much faster. We're showing the Mat-Su, the Big Five, and the state. This first test that we're showing here is all grades in English language arts, and you can see that we have more kids who are proficient or above than the other districts. There's another category that's at the end that's not displayed here because the state hadn't released this data yet for those kids who need support. So I always talk about kids who are in the green and kids who are in the red. I did put in today's board connect that we do have some of that initial data for us and the state, and we can tell that we outpaced the state on the other side of this equation too. So we moved 4% more kids out of the red in English, and the state actually added kids back to the red. So they went the wrong direction while we went up. So we did better on the top end and better on the bottom end. And the same thing is true for this next slide. This is math proficiency. You'll see the same pattern. 40% of our kids were the red bar here, were proficient or above. That's the most of any of the big five and much better than the state. And now that I have that new data, I didn't have a chance to make a graph for you. The same thing happened in math on the end where we want to move kids out of need support. We moved kids out of that column, and the state actually added a few percentage points to that column. The last one is science. Same pattern. We lead the big five and the state in kids who are proficient or above in science. And so that's good news. It's hard, though, to compare over time because, A, the state test has changed multiple times. Some years we didn't even have it. In 2020, everybody didn't take it at all. Some years it's been only 2 of the 3. I mentioned already that the state test has changed many times, and so it got considerably harder in 2022. So the only way to compare yourself to other districts and the state over time is to compare, like, how are you doing relative to the state average on that given year? Like, are you above the state average or are you below the state average? And if you do that with everybody, then you're like comparing even Steven, even though the assessments changed and the number of assessments changed every year. So the board knows I like complicated graphs. I'll try to explain this when I'll be the teacher. The orange squiggly bar is how we actually did compared to the state average. So you can see that in this most recent year, we were 126% better than the state average. That's good. And the straight line does what your brain may or may not be very good at, and that's the trend line. Like, okay, how are you doing over time? Like, one of the anomalies is that year 2021, where we were 128% of the state average. Why? We were open, and all of our kids took the state assessment, and most of the other places weren't. And those who actually did take the state assessment did so bad that it made us look really, really good that year. The point is, the straight line is the more important line. Over time, we are getting better compared to the state. The next one, not to pick on Kenai, it's just they're the next closest to us. You can see I've overlaid all of that. So we're still the orange squiggly line and the orange straight line, the straight line being our trend line that we're getting better over time. And then you can see the green squiggly line for Kenai, and their straight line is actually going down. So over time, they've been getting worse relative to the state average, and we've been getting better. And then we always compare ourselves to the big five. So the next one gets really busy. There's each of the big five. We're the orange one. Kenai's the green one. Like, if you look at the red line, that's Fairbanks. And you can see that over, from 2017 to 2024, you don't need the computer to tell you Fairbanks has stayed pretty darn flat. They're better than the state average every year, like 10 and 11% better, but they haven't gotten worse and they haven't gotten better. The yellow line is Juneau, and you probably don't need a computer to be able to tell that, like, over time, they're getting worse compared to the state average. The light blue line is Anchorage, and over time, they're getting a little bit better, but they started out lower than everybody else. So you could probably see that, but if you couldn't, there I've overlaid all the trend lines that the computer calculates. And on the last one, because it gets way too busy to see, we take out all the squiggly lines and you're just left with the trend. And the trend is that we're getting better faster than everybody else. Fairbanks is pretty flat. Kenai and Juneau are actually going down. Anchorage is going up. They started out lower than us, and they aren't going up quite as fast as we are. And on the next one, this was what we're going to look for. And I already talked about the needs support side of it, which I didn't have last Wednesday. They're starting to release some of the data, but I don't have it for the other big five. But my intuition tells me if the state as a whole went backwards on that category and we went up on that category, I'm betting that some of the other big school districts probably went backwards. I don't know that yet. When I do, I will obviously present it to the school board. And then we always try to end a meeting with highlighting good things. So here was a good thing I supported, or I highlighted last year. It's our support for CTE across our district, and we highlighted that at the state fair. We had several different schools there trying to, do things like present the robotics opportunities that they have at some schools. I see Trish Zug there. She's our CTE czar across the district, and I can tell that she's talking about our health pathways career in that picture. So we had lots of interest there. And then I learned last week, we can ask Mr. Berge, the farmer in the room, that a person from Cordova may or may not know the difference between a pumpkin and a cabbage. Last week I called this a pumpkin, and now I know that we didn't win for the largest pumpkin. In fact, our students out at Denina won for the largest cabbage in the junior division at the state fair. So there's always things to celebrate, and growing large cabbages is also one of those things. That's all I have. I'm happy to take questions about this. I wanted to keep this short because I know we have lots of other probably more pressing topics than our enrollment and how we're doing on these achievement measures.
Any questions, comments? Somebody
Madam Mayor?
online trying to talk, go ahead online.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to let Superintendent Trainee know I appreciate doing the cost adjusted numbers. I see that kind of flattens the graph a bit, and I won't take up time now, but I'd love to kind of dig into that with you in terms of how that calculation was made a little further. But I appreciate you coming back to address my question about that. Thank you.
Anyone else online? Anyone else here? Tom?
Dr. Trainee, you did very well comparing us to how we stand in the state. But the state of Alaska is notoriously known for being among the last. Can you explain some of the measures that we are using within the district that compare us nationally to other schools across the nation and not just within the state?
Yeah, thank you for that question. One of the ways that we can compare ourselves nationally is looking at the percentage of our students who have earned college credit through a program such as the Advanced Placement Program. And so 5 years ago, if you were to measure the production rate of college qualifying scores across the country for every 100 students, it was around 19.5, maybe close to 20. So 20 out of every 100 students across the country were earning college credit qualifying scores in high school. We were about 4.5. When we posted our scores from last spring's testing window, we were 21. So we have almost a 5-fold increase over a 4-year time, and we have now passed the country in that measure. And that's a test that's given. Those tests are given to everybody across the entire country on the same day. It's the most even Steven, comparison that I can think of. It's the same for everybody across the entire country. So that's one that we can easily do, and we can compare ourselves nationally. Of course, I talk now and I say we're a good district now. It's easy for me to say that when I compare us to other districts across the country, and we're heading to be a great district. Like, our trajectory is pretty astounding in that. And it's not just AP, it's also IB. And it's not just those more academic categories. Our CTE, it's harder to compare a CTE. There is no nationwide CTE test. But when I look at our numbers for career technical education, say 4 years ago, we were in the neighborhood of around 4,500 CTE courses for the year. We have about 6,000 high school kids, so about 4,500 out of 6,000. Last year, we gave more CTE courses than we had students, about 6,400. Currently, the first semester of this year, I just had the data run this morning. We're about 5,200 already for the first semester of this year. Second semester is usually lower, but even if it were 80%, we're going to be something close to 9,000 this year. So we're dramatically growing our CTE numbers. I looked at the other districts in the state, no one's close to us. The other big 5 districts, as far as CTE participation, a number of concentrators. It's going to be the same for most districts across the country. We're really, really leading that area.
Oh, okay. So IT is having problems with your monitors, as you can see, and that's not something just to try to keep you awake? It's actual problem that's going on. Thanks, Caleb. Further questions to the superintendent? Okay, seeing and hearing none, and thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item is manager. Oh, cool, okay. We'll have a building construction progress report, sir, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly, School Board. My name is Cole Branham. I'm the Project Management Division Manager for the Mat-Su Borough. So I'm going to give you guys an update on construction we have ongoing with the school district. I'm going to start with some of our smaller projects we have ongoing, and then I'll wrap up with Mat-Su Central School, which is kind of the big project we have going on now.
Yeah.
So first off, we have a series of boiler projects. So we have 3 schools we're doing on that: Wasilla High, Susitna Valley Junior Senior High School, and Colony Middle. So out of those 3, Wasilla High and Susitna Valley are the higher priority ones. Those are boiler replacements. So those are actually out on the beat, on the street, advertised for construction bids. So as soon as we get those in, we'll be working to get those boilers installed. We have good, reliable heating for those schools. Colony, that one's going to take a little bit of design work. It's some pumps and control work. So we'll work through that and probably get that work done next summer. We also have some elevator projects. So we have Big Lake Elementary, Palmer High, and Palmer Junior Middle School. So those are projects to upgrade those elevators to meet ADA standards. So those all require design work to make sure that those fit in the buildings properly. So we'll work through that this winter and get those projects out to construction next summer when school's out of session. And then we also have a couple of FEMA projects. So these are hazardous mitigation projects. So they're funded through FEMA. The first one's a seismic gas shutoff valve project. So that includes 40 different sites across the district, and that's 51 valves. So we're working on the bid documents for that. We'll get that out to bid. Again, that work will probably happen next summer after school's out of session. And then the last project we're working on, so we're collaborating with the school district on this, is the suspended ceiling and sprinkler replacement at 14 different facilities. Again, this is a FEMA project. It's a retrofit for seismic on that. So they're just beginning the assessment on that. Once that's complete, we'll develop a plan on phasing the design and construction for that project. It's a pretty large project. We anticipate that to take a couple of summers. That'll have to take place when school is out of session. So now I'll transition to the Mat-Su Central School. So first I'll run through some pictures, and then I'll give you guys an update on that. So here, this first photo here just shows the front of the building. This is definitely a few weeks, maybe a month old, but it highlights the metal structure and the framing on the building. There we go. So this next image here, this shows the contractor installing the exterior panels on the north side of the building. Here's a shot of the interior of the school. So this is in the great room, looking at the staircase going up to the second story. We've got another shot here, interior of the building. So this is on the second story, looking down into the great room and kind of the entrance of the building. So here's another shot that depicts the panel installation with the crane lifting one of the vertical panels into place on the side of the building. Here's a photo of the construction crews installing the parking lot curb. So this is the formwork for that. Then we have an aerial photo here. This is after the curb was installed. And then another aerial photo here of the front of the building. You can see Pioneer Peak in the background there. So the Mat-Su Central School project is tracking very well as far as schedule and budget. So we started this project last fall. They were able to break ground, do the earthwork, and get the foundation laid. And then over the winter, we worked through submittals, contractor questions, RFIs, and ordered long lead time items so we could hit the ground running this spring. And the contractor's been able to do that. So right now they're working on the outside civil work. So they're doing the final grading, the curbing. They're planning on getting the parking lot paved by the end of the month. They're also working on closing in the exterior of the building. So they're doing the panels. You saw some of the photos of the panel installation. They're working on the windows and the doors, getting all that. So the building will be dry and enclosed. The target is by the end of this month. On the interior of the building, they're working on the sheetrock, which marks the transition from rough-in work to finish work. So it's a good milestone for the interior of the building there. We're also starting the commissioning process. So the contractor's getting their pre-functional checklist submitted. This early stages of that, the real commissioning process will take place in probably November and December as we're getting closer to substantial completion. So as you guys are probably aware, we included Catherine Drive in this construction project, which was one of the Transportation Infrastructure Program 2021 projects, TIP 21, with the bid. So that project connected a road from Trunk Road to Stringfield Road. And that road's complete and open. So our goal was to get that open before school started. We were able to achieve that to help with the congestion issues around Pioneer Peak, and then the additional traffic that'll be added through Mat-Su Central. So that work is complete as far as the road and the pathway goes. We are working with MEA to get power to our load centers for the streetlights. We're installing streetlights at the intersection of Trunk and Stringfield. So once we get the power to the load centers, we'll get those poles erected and the lights energized and going. So we're still working on a timeline on when we'll get that service connection with MEA. So for this project, we awarded a couple different adults. We did a gravel parking lot, generator connection and pad, intercom paging and clock system, and then access road extension from to Catherine Drive, which leads me to my next point. So in your guys' packets, there is a map. I don't know if it's on here. No, it's not on here. So there's an aerial map on here that shows you, you'll see Pioneer Peak Elementary, and then you'll see a drawing of Mat-Su Central School, and then you can see Catherine Drive there to the north. So that last adult for the access drive comes off that north parking lot on Mat-Su Central School, and then heads east and then north to Catherine Drive. So that is connected. Currently, we're working with the contractor to add a connection to Pioneer Peak Elementary. So Pioneer Peak Elementary is one of the schools that has a lot of congestion issues, circulation issues on site, as well as on Stringfield Road. I believe there's a lot of congestion at the intersection with the Palm-Wasilla Highway there during pickup and drop-off times. So by providing this connection, we'll provide an alternate route out, leave some options for the school district to adjust their circulation on site and kind of improve the congestion there. So we felt like that was a pretty big win that we were able to add that connection in. So we're working with the contractor to get that added in currently. They will get the earthwork done this fall. It's up in the air whether or not they're going to get the paving done. But if they don't get it done this fall, they'll be able to pave next spring. It just comes down to, resourcing and if they can get it in because it's so late in the season for paving. But we'll definitely get the earthwork done this year while their equipment's already mobilized to the site. They've got everything there to do the earthwork. We're just taking advantage of that to get this connection done. And we've coordinated with school district staff on that connection and the location and tie-in point and everything like that. So we've got the alignment fine-tuned. This figure here is a conceptual, but it's pretty close to what we're going to be putting in for that connection. So the substantial completion date for this project is December 15th, and that is when the building could technically be occupied, could be used for its intended purpose. And then substantial or final completion is June 30th of 2025. And so we're on track for that. So that wraps up my my update for you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have them.
Anyone have any questions? Anybody online have any questions? Okay, I guess not, sir. Thank
All
you.
right.
So then, since he wrapped both the building construction and the capital construction into one presentation, the next one we have then is the district state legislative priorities.
Only one slide.
Good evening, I guess afternoon. I'm so used to saying evening. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly and School Board. Actually, one item that I just wanted to review regarding the capital construction plan is you heard just a minute ago some of the projects that are smaller projects in scope that are in place, really related to boilers and elevators. Just as a reminder to the school board primarily, this was the list of projects that we submitted to the borough last year as part of funding for the first time ever. The collaboration and the partnership has been exceptional. We very much appreciated working with the borough and getting these projects done, both in taking advantage of their expertise as well as the opportunity to have the fiscal resources to make progress on some of these deferred maintenance projects. Similarly, we have a request for the current year as we look at additional bond debt that will be expiring. And so that, I believe, is in front of you. It is the spreadsheet with the orange banner on the top. Those are the list of projects that the board approved recently and will be transmitting to the borough. We wanted to just make sure that you had those in front of you in case there were any questions. But that's also just part of that construction update. And then additionally, in working with the borough, we wanted to collaborate on the board's legislative priorities. So the borough had requested that we go through our process a little earlier than we had in prior years to make sure that these priorities could be presented to the assembly in mid-September, and we thought this was the most opportune time to give board members an opportunity to speak to any particular priority, answer any questions that assembly members might have. And so these are the legislative priorities that were also recently adopted by the school board. They are broken down into two areas. The first is really what we have called critical priorities, and then and these are really our more traditional legislative priorities and where we will spend the bulk of our effort advocating in Juneau. And then finally, we have the capital requests, which start on the second page. And for all of those projects, we will also enter CAPSIS requests so that the legislature has access to those projects. But we are presenting these to the assembly for consideration as you're working, I believe, soon in building your own legislative agenda. And we can certainly answer questions about any of these, or if board members have any comments they'd like to make.
Any questions? Anybody online have questions?
Hi, this is Dmitry, Assemblyman Dmitry Fonov.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I don't have the paperwork in front of me. Is the one of the legislation priorities that I've asked Attorney Draft and Mike Brown should already have it by now is about asking state to also give us authority to change the term for the school board length so that we'd be able to also match them with 4-year terms. Is that something that Mike or Mr. Attorney can also give an update, please?
Yes, sir, it is item number 3, and I can read it to you. It says, allow municipalities and borough the ability to align board member terms with other elected officials. And then there's rationale. The Mat-Su Borough Assembly voted to extend the terms for assembly members to 4 years. This was done to align the local elections with the state and national election cycle and to reduce the costs associated with facilitating elections. So the Matsu Borough School District would similarly like to support the increased efficiency by allowing board members to serve a 4-year term. However, AS 34.22.050 does not allow for this adjustment. So that's what that says. Would you like to add anything to it, sir, or is that okay for you? Assemblyperson Fanoff, you okay with that? Did we lose you? I think he's traveling, so maybe might have got into it. Okay, all righty. Yes, Assemblyperson.
Dr. Trainee, for number 3, it says, however, AS 14.12.050 does not allow for this adjustment. Do you have a plan to try and adjust that through the legislature?
Are you, Assemblymember Gambler, I assume you're talking about, like, do we have any suggested language change?
Correct. And are you working with any legislators to change that?
Yeah, typically what we do is we'd wait for, first, I appreciate this process where we have our legislative priorities and we're trying to meld them with your legislative priorities. So let's presume that we all agree that this is the right way to go. Then we work with our, with Eldon Mulder. I believe you've met Eldon before. We draft language and then we try to find a sponsor. So that would certainly be the plan. Do we have one right now? No, not yet. But hopefully after this meeting, we can start that process.
Did you want some more exact language? What was that you were asking about?
No, I'm familiar with the process, so that's what I was actually looking for. But if I may, I do have a question about number 2 on the legislative priorities. So could you tell me, how is your teacher and support staff numbers this year? Are you where you want to be?
I'm going to take a stab at it, and then I'm going to turn it over to my deputy superintendent because she works with the numbers more closely and she may have them in her head. As of this morning, we only had 2 certified positions, like classroom positions, that were not filled out of roughly, 1,200-ish. We on the non-certified end, we always struggle. There are numerous positions across the district at almost every school where we don't have enough of those employees. You might have the actual number. It's a continuing problem. It's always a problem. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
The only thing that I will add to Assemblymember Gamble is that each year in the state of Alaska, school districts are required to report their first day vacancies. And Matsu is a leader amongst the Big Five and really a leader amongst the state in terms of having very few vacancies on the first day. So we do a lot to recruit and have that teacher workforce ready to go. The vacancies that we actually have right now are because of other circumstances, late resignations, things like that. The other thing I'll mention in terms of our classified workforce is that while we are not where we would like to be, our numbers are significantly better than they were last year to start the school year. So we're seeing improvement, and we're certainly trending and working in the right direction.
Go ahead, sir.
How many teachers are emergency certified?
Through the mayor to Member Swanson, I don't know how many are emergency certified. The state is quite behind on certificate processing right now. That is not a problem for us, but in terms of running that analysis, we have a number of renewals that are still pending. Once they get caught up, we'd be able to provide information on that to the board.
Thank you.
Assemblyperson Gamble, go ahead.
So do you have a program for non-certified teachers, but those who have professional instructor certifications? Like for myself, I spent many, many years as a fire instructor and many, many years as an air traffic controller instructor. So do they have a way to get into the system and not be at that bottom substitute teacher pay scale?
through the mayor, there's actually a few opportunities that the state of Alaska provides. So for individuals who are going to be working in career and technical education areas, so in your example, if we have someone who's a pilot and they're going to be teaching a pilot program, then yes, they are eligible for what's called a Type M Special Services Certificate. They do not have to go back to university and be traditionally trained as a teacher. We can take advantage of their professional expertise and experience in teaching in that limited area. Aside from that, if we have individuals who are interested in serving as second career teachers in a different area, say you have someone who is working in aeronautics and they really want to teach math or physics, and they are interested in going back to school to acquire a more traditional teaching license, we can employ them as a certificated teacher in the interim. Those are the emergency certificates that Mr. Swanson was alluding to. So we've got two options depending on what that individual community member or candidate's interest is and how they would like to go about pursuing education as a career.
Go ahead, sir.
One last question. Can you describe to me your recruitment and retention program? Do you have one? And what does that look like?
Yes, through the mayor. We have a recruiting coordinator within the district who manages most of our recruitment. Our program primarily consists of an online presence with virtual platforms. The days of job fairs, which was the primary method by which school districts would recruit teachers, is really sort of a dying event. And so we saw very little attendance and very little success in attending in-person job fairs. So we do a lot of online advertising. We work with universities. We do online job fair events. We also recruit a number of teachers from other school districts in Alaska. And one of our other more innovative programs is we're working with a university out of Nebraska to offer a scholarship to Mat-Su graduates who want to stay in Mat-Su, work for Mat-Su while they pursue their education degree. And so we really have a broad approach to a lot of different options for recruiting teachers.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
Could I add a little to that, Madam Mayor? I just want to take this opportunity to brag about Katie and her side of the house. When she described that first day vacancy report and she said that we lead everybody, we don't lead them by a little, we lead them by lots. If you compare us to the other big five, they'll have dozens and dozens of classroom vacancies, maybe hundreds of classroom vacancies, and we'll come in each year at 2, 1, 4. They do a remarkable job at this recruiting effort. So there, thank you, Katie.
Go ahead, sir.
You spoke about the classified being the hardest or the biggest gap. Which positions are the hardest to fill and retain?
I think those, anecdotally off the cuff through the chair to Member Swanson, the two areas where, I'll say 3 areas where we have the greatest difficulty, it really conforms to those classification areas that make up the largest number of the workforce. So school monitors are probably our hardest to hire and retain. They are entry-level and part-time work. And so traditionally, for us, they've always been one of the most difficult, and it's really that entry level and the part-time nature of it. These are the folks that are going out to recess. So you can imagine when it's 20 below and the wind is blowing, that's a tough job. So that's probably our most difficult. I think the next would be for custodial and special education assistants. Part of the reason why we see larger vacancies there is because they make up a larger percentage of that classified workforce. The biggest group are special education assistants. We have more special education assistants than any other job classification within the classified ranks. However, I will say that as of a few days ago, I think we had all custodial positions filled, which I think is the first time in probably since the pandemic that's been the case.
You have follow-up, sir? No. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Anybody online have questions, comments? Okay, don't hear anybody. So we are now to the next item on our agenda for comments, and President Underwood, if you would get comments from your school board members, please.
Member Cruz? I just want to thank everyone who put this together, and it's always really exciting to share the things that we're doing, the things that are working for the children, and that our scores are going up, and really literacy rates are the key to life success. If you can read really well, you'll be able to learn anything. And so I get really excited when we can share the improvement. And I'm really excited to work together on the projects so that more education dollars actually go to the education. And I think that's going to be a huge key to success, is why we all need boilers and we all have repairs that we have to do. Every one of those dollars goes to that instead of literacy, instead of math, instead of science. And so the more we can work together to do that, I think the more powerful and impactful our education dollars will be for the students. And I'm thankful to be here. I hope everyone has a wonderful fall and gets to enjoy the beautiful colors outside. Member Swanson?
I'd like to thank the public for coming out and speaking. And I'd like to thank the Assembly for the cooperation on our construction budget. But it's really good to have this relationship moving forward. And I'd like to wish everyone a safe drive home. Thank you.
Member McCollum?
Thank you. It's always fun to meet with the Borough Assembly, and I wish more of them were here in person, but it's really a good thing that we do these joint meetings. I enjoy them. And thank you to Dr. Trainee and Katie for the outstanding work that's being done. It's really exciting to see the progress, the continual growth. I too am thrilled by all of that. And I know how hard the staff, the teachers, everybody is working at that. And I really appreciate that. Looking at that, the drawings of Matsu Central is exciting. And I will be honest, seeing a building like that makes me think we need to fill it with more kids or more students. So I hope we will grow that correspondence program. It appears, I haven't walked through it personally, to be a very large building. So I will hope we can be more competitive in that area.
Member Berge?
Forgive my pronunciation, but primus inter pares is a Latin phrase that I was exposed to young in my life. And it stands for first among equals. And our staff and our district has done a wonderful job of making us first among equals within the state of Alaska. But now it's time to set the bar. Our children are expected to compete globally. Though they may live in the valley, their employees may be located stateside or overseas. So now we need to raise the bar, and we need to start comparing ourselves to our equals nationally and globally. And we need to strive to be first among that crowd. We've already demonstrated that we can be first among Alaskans. Now we need to be first nationally and globally. Thank you.
Member Pitcher?
I've had an opportunity to cast some eyes on that new Matsu Central building. It is a big building. It's looking great, and it's great to hear these updates on it. It's good to hear that things are going on schedule. Really appreciate all the efforts that go into that. Really appreciate the efforts that have gone into raising the success numbers with our district in relation with the state. And yes, we look forward to it being higher in relation to the nation as well. We really appreciate the hard efforts of Superintendent Trainee and his team. They really believe in their vision, and it's easy to see, and we really appreciate that, and we support them. I was asked to read a letter of thanks from prior member Yunt, and it goes as follows. First, I want to apologize for the short notice. Staff educated me on the fact I was allowed to continue serving until the election, but that would have meant special meetings in November and over the course of Thanksgiving. That didn't seem fair at all to me, so the most respectful thing I could do for all of you was to step down immediately and allow the process to play out before it affected anyone's holidays or family time. To Jason, Russ, Tom, Alex, Ken, Cheyenne, and all of your teams, I sleep good at night knowing this community is served by you. Every single one of you are fully dedicated to this community, and we are all very fortunate to have you. To our amazing school board members, I have stated on public record many times, I believe we have the best school board in the country, and I still firmly believe that. Keeping our schools open and our students in school learning during COVID was brilliant. I'm forever grateful you immediately stopped it when we had young men trying to use girls' bathrooms in our high schools, as well as stopping boys from playing sports against girls. We live in the most conservative and common sense community in Alaska, and you have done exactly what a vast majority of local residents voted you in to do, without ever once bending the knee to the radicals on the left. For that, I hope you know I am forever grateful. To my fellow assembly members, both past and current, Vern and Mrs. Edna, I hope you all know that serving alongside you has been the biggest honor of my life. I will always be grateful for our time together, and I applaud what outstanding members of the community all of you are. I hope you all know this world, and especially this community, are better off because of you. To my personal all-time GOAT, greatest of all time, Mr. George McKee, serving alongside you my first year was nothing less than inspiring. I admired the fact you gave no care in the world to which member of the media or what special interest might be in the crowd. You always voted the right way and never once gave in to the pressure from the vocal minority. I've spent the next 3 years remembering those lessons and tried hard to carry forth with the same mindset. To Lonnie, Nick, and Mike, I appreciate all of your hard work, helping me accomplish the goals I set forth. I never wanted to tread water or coast while I sat in this position. Working on the most difficult issues and pushing forward with things, even if they were not easy, was always my plan. Fortunately for me, all three of you are unbelievably brilliant and experts in your fields of study. Without you, there's no way I would have been able to complete half of what I did. Goodbyes have never been my thing, so I'll keep this short and sweet. I consider each and every one of you a friend. If you ever need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call, and I'll gladly help in any way I can. Keep fighting the good fight, everyone. In my very biased opinion, the Mat-Su Borough is the greatest place in the world to live, work, and raise a family because of folks like yourselves helping guide us. Now go shoot a moose.
I have to go after that. That doesn't seem fair. I'll make mine very brief. That was wonderful. I do appreciate the collaboration with the borough and looking forward to the future relationship and continually driving towards a positive direction for the growth that is going on in this community. It's been a pleasure the last 3 years being able to collaborate with you and learn about this borough, and I just feel like everybody that is sitting in these seats truly does have a heart for their community and the members here and want to see it go in a different direction. No matter what side or what your political belief system is, I do believe that people actually get in these seats because they care about the people that they're serving. So it's been a pleasure, and I just look forward to more growth and positivity for our community in the future.
Thank you. So I'll go to our online people. Assemblyperson Nowers, parting comments.
Yeah, thank you. Always appreciate these meetings and the updates. I appreciate School Board Member Berge's comments. I think that's correct that we have to compete nationally and globally, and I'm not a fan of extra tests, but as much as possible finding metrics, I think, that show how we're doing. And I think the main metric is where our kids land. If they're getting jobs, they're going on to higher education or, into the military. Knowing where our kids are landing, I think, is the important metric. So thank you for bringing that up. To School Board Member McCollum, I'm not there right now because I've managed to catch the crud that's going around. So I was going to try to reduce my spread of that. But I will be there for the assembly meeting. So the people who sit to the right or left of me, please adjust your seats correspondingly. But I do try to make these meetings and hope to be at the next one. Thank you.
Assemblyperson Hale, are you still online, sir? Parting comments?
No comment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyperson Fauna, parting comments?
Thank you, everyone. And Mr. Pitcher, thank you for reading that letter from Mr. Young. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone else, for joining. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, parting comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to apologize for not being there in person, but I wanted to thank everybody for coming out and thank the Lord for all his blessings and his grace and the power that he has, that he can turn this valley upside down and bring us a great revival. May all of us be a blessing to our community. May we glorify God in Jesus' name. Amen.
Parting comments, Assemblyperson Gamble?
I'd like to thank you, Dr. Trini and Katie, for coming and doing this presentation. As I'm out in the schools, I know it's difficult enough to be a teacher, but I just want to say again what you emphasized earlier about being a special education teacher. And it's got to be just a very difficult job to do. Also, I hope that the school board this year takes a really active part in the budgeting process. I know that the school board kind of does it different than the assembly does, but I think it's very important that the school board members know your budget inside and out and how it's put together. The last thing I'd like to say is that my son and daughter were both products of the school from beginning to their graduation of high school, and both of them are just doing outstanding. So I know that what you're doing and what the school board is doing is very important to our kids, and I appreciate everything that you do. Thank you.
Borough Manager Mike Brown, parting comments, sir? Mr. Attorney, Madam Clerk, parting comments? No? Alrighty. Oh, I appreciate all of you coming out and just hours of work that all of you give to your community, and just very appreciative that we live in the Valley, the greatest place to live, work, and play, right? So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 5:10.
You will now be disconnected.